We are in the midst of a series, and that has been going on since the beginning of the year about following me, and looked at following Jesus, actually, into light, which is something that makes good sense to me. But right now we're going to switch gears, and for the next few weeks look at following Jesus into darkness, which does not necessarily make good sense to me, but is one of those things that God challenges us to do. If we're really going to grab hold of what it means to be a follower of Christ, we have got to be willing to follow Him wherever He takes us, and darkness is one of those areas that He is going to take us. And this morning we're going to be talking about following Jesus into the storm. Now, before we go any further, anybody have a good storm story? You got a story about a storm, and maybe a storm and water put together? I know if Bruce was here, I've got a few of those. Gosh, I see Mike shaking his head. I think you had a truck just recently, didn't you, Mike? That you kind of, do you remember that? That. Yeah. Mike put a truck in the Atlantic Ocean. I don't know how that happened exactly, but a $40,000 truck, Mike, that was claimed by the waves and whatever, and you were in the truck watching this thing fill up with water and. I won't go any further. Mike is very proud of that. His wife is proud of Mike, and by the way, Mike's good to see you back here. He's just coming back from hip surgery. So I've got a story. Can you believe that you put me in a boat in a lake that alone with a motor, that there might be a story to this? This happened. I was a park ranger for a couple summers, so I had the rights to go to Logging Lake, which had a boat, and I took it to the head of the lake from the ranger camp station. I took it to the head, and then I hiked across to another lake and ate my lunch. And meanwhile, this menacing cloud comes up, and so I'm running on back, and then sprinklings begin to sprinkle, and I jump into the boat, and and then it doesn't quite start the way it's supposed to, and it drifts back a little bit, and by the time the motor starts, it's right up against the rocks. And so the prop did start, but it hit a rock and sheared the, what pin is it? It sheared it. That one, and so there I am. Now the storm is really starting to happen, and I'm here, and I'm saying, hey, we're going no place fast with this boat, and so I'm wondering what to do. And one thing I was doing plenty of. Do you know one thing I was doing a lot of? As then we're in the. Panic. We're in Glacier National Park up in the mountains, and let me tell you something. There's nothing like being in the mountains in a thunderstorm. Ba-boom, and the lightning it just feels like at any moment what's going to happen. I'm ready to meet the Lord. I said, Lord, if you give me a little bit more time, I'll never do anything stupid again in my whole life. This is. I tell you, I tell you, that's just storm stories. I bet you you've got a storm story. If we went around and just said, tell us a storm story. Well, this morning we're going to be looking at a storm story that Jesus had and shared with His disciples on one day. But the story really starts with Jesus and Peter. The Apostle Peter's mother-in-law. There's nothing in the Bible that speaks about the Apostle Peter, the disciple Peter, and his wife, but there is something about his mother-in-law, and the story begins in Mark 1, verse 29. It says, as soon as they left the synagogue, Jesus and the disciples, they went with James and John to the home of Simon and Andrew. And of course, Simon is Peter, Simon and Andrew. Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they immediately told Jesus about her. So he went to look So he went to her, took her hand, and helped her up. And the fever left her, and she began to wait on them. I love this, how fast that happened. You know, as soon as she was up, she begins to wait, and always wonder about her. She was kind of a tough cookie, wasn't she? I remember one time my mom was a bit sick, and I was coming to visit, and my dad said to my mom, "Hey, you sit down. Tom can help himself." And I remember my mom getting a little bit. My mom used to have this little bit of. She could have played football if she was built. You know, she had that little bit of fire in her, and she said, "Don't." And she said to my dad, and I remember some of these exchanges. She said to my dad, "Don't you deny me the privilege of waiting on my son. You know, this is a privilege to me." And it's kind of I think that Peter's mother-in-law is kind of, "Don't you deny me the privilege of being able to wait." You know, we've got it mixed up, don't we? I think she had an element of truth that a lot of us escape. That really that idea of serving is where we find ourselves, isn't it? It's not in being served. It's more blessed to give, isn't it, than to receive. And those of us have been forced to be in a position of receiving. Realize, gosh, you know, we'd much rather be in the servant's position, and that's where she was. But anyways, that happened, and the word got out. Jesus healed her. So guess what happens? Some other people started coming. You know, Jesus can heal. So they started coming. And it says that evening, after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. And it says the whole town gathered at the door, and Jesus healed many who had various diseases. Now, let me just say, if this is me, you know what I'm doing? I'm on an adrenaline high. A whole town has come out. You know, suppose the whole town were to come out to Harbor. Wow, I feel pretty good about myself. Wow, look at all these people coming out because I'm the healer. Now Jesus didn't quite respond that way. He wasn't trying to build his own ego and trying to establish himself as some kind of superstar. He was never into that mindset. When things were going really good in Jesus' life, what was he apt to do? When things were really sailing along, it was at that point that Jesus was most likely to pull away from all the people who were saying, "Jesus, we want you as king. Jesus, we want you as our leader. Jesus, you're the one we want to be close to." It's at that point that Jesus said, "No, wait a second. I don't want to listen to everything that everybody's saying about me, about how wonderful they say I am. I want to listen to whom? I want to listen to my Father. I need some time with God alone. I need to get a change of perspective." Now, when things are going really right in our life, I think that's important. But when things are really going good in our life, it's important that we pull away so we can hear what God is saying to us. And that's exactly what Jesus did. It says, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up and left the house and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. And that was kind of a norm for Jesus. That wasn't just an abnormal. If you read the scriptures, it's kind of interesting just to see in the New Testament how often Jesus pulled away to pray, pulled away to spend time with his Father, pulled away to be renewed, resuscitated, restored. And this is Jesus' modus operandi. And finally the disciples wondering, well, gosh, where is Jesus? They go looking for him. Simon, Peter, and his companions went to look for him. And when they found him, they exclaimed, "Everyone's looking for you, Jesus. Everyone's looking for you." So what does Jesus say? Well, at that point, Jesus says, "You know what? Really, I think we're supposed to leave." You know, it kind of seems like the opposite of what you would say. Yeah, everybody's looking for you. We've got this big thing going. Shouldn't we just stay and build a temple right here? You know, build a big sanctuary, build something because it's happening right here. Jesus says, "You know what? I think it's time. It's time to leave. It's time to go," because Jesus was more interested, really, in building disciples than building an organizational structure. He wanted people who were sold out and committed. And that's what he was trying to build. He wasn't trying to build this kind of mega ministry. He was trying to build something intensive and deep. He wanted to speak and challenge those that were beginning to be open to a life of full devotion and commitment. He didn't want to just kind of fill a church with bodies. He wanted people who were given their souls, their lives and their souls back to the Lord who had created them. Well, in the book of Matthew, and there's a couple different spots where this story is shared in the Scriptures, and Mark is one, and you shift over to the book of Matthew after this event takes place. It says that Jesus, when he saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake, the Sea of Galilee. He's saying, let's get over to this other side. They're in the Capernaum area, where Jesus' hometown kind of area, and they're going to go across to the other side. And it says, then a teacher of the law came to him and said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." He saw something exciting happen. He wanted to be in on this. Now, it's kind of interesting. You don't often see in the New Testament where there's teachers of the law saying, "Jesus, I really want to be one of your disciples." You don't see this happening very often. Most of the time, the teachers of the law are challenging Jesus and saying, "Jesus, I don't quite like what you're saying. I don't like what you're doing. I don't necessarily trust where you're going." But here we have this guy, and by the way, he's powerful, influential. He has probably got a degree of wealth and influence. He is a man that you want in your church. He's a guy that you'd like to say, "You know what? I'd like to build a ministry around you. You're a teacher of the law." Man, I've got all these fishermen, and I've got these zealots, I've got these losers kind of following me all over the place. I finally got a guy who's really got it together. And man, let's team up. You and I, we're going to make this happen. You're the teacher of the law because you got this influence. So what does Jesus say to him? Let's team up together. Let's make it happen. No, this is what Jesus said to this teacher of the law. He says this: "Foxes have dens, and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." The Son of Man's homeless. Now, I just want to tell you something. You want to follow me? You're going to need to be exposed to the elements. You want to follow me? You're going to be exposed to the storms of life. You're going to follow me. It's not going to be this mega, beautiful, wonderful ministry that you're seeing right now. You follow me, I'm going to challenge you to the core of your existence. If you follow me, it's not going to be easy. If you follow me, it's going to be into the darkness, it's going to be into the storm. If you follow me, there's going to be something that I'm going to ask of you that's going to pull the very best out of you. And let me tell you something, that's been my course of life. Some of us know what it's like to follow Jesus into homelessness. Some of us know what that's like firsthand. It's not pleasant from what I understand. It's not an easy calling. But this is what Jesus said. That's what I'm asking you to do. Whatever is a challenge, the storm is going to hit. Well, then we find, after this discussion with this teacher of the law, and Jesus talks about discipleship and the challenge that he's issuing people, then he says, and he gets into the boat, and his disciples follow him, and suddenly a furious storm came up on the lake. Let me just ask you something. If you know a furious storm is going to come up, you get into the boat and get into the lake. The thing about storms is that they rearrange your life and unexpectedly. How many of you had a storm in your life that's rearranged your life really unexpectedly? I mean, it wasn't on the radar. It just bang, and my life was totally changed by this storm. even I would not have gone to Logging Lake. If I knew the storm was actually going to be coming up, if I knew, but I didn't know it. You know, storms have a way of surprising us. And that's the thing. It surprise and rearrange. And if there's a furious storm, apparently on Sea of Galilee, it's a relatively shallow lake, and I think storms can come on down in a hurry and really kick up some pretty powerful waves in a hurry. You know, it's kind of interesting just where we are. I don't see Bruce around us, but I think Bruce was in a storm out here on the Chesapeake, and I think he thought it was all over for him. It was a furious storm. My sister was in one on the James River, where she was in this thing where they were skiing. They were in kind of a cove, but they got back out into the river and it was open. And she said, "Man, I thought it was going to be over for us." Some of you have stories like that too. Well, that's what was going on. It's a furious storm. They're a little boat, big storm, out in the lake. And it says, suddenly a furious storm came up on the lake so that the waves swept over the boat. And you get that feeling where it's splashing over the top, and you're saying, gosh, you know, this could be it. This could be it. And what's Jesus doing?
Sleeping.
He's sleeping. What is wrong? The picture doesn't seem to be right here. You know, the only person I know who might be able to do that is my spouse. She can sleep through. She can sleep through everything. You know, we can be in the middle of an argument, and then Ann will, hey. I was still making my point. You know, she's out. Anybody else like that? You can sleep through anything. I mean, any kind of. Yeah, okay. James is like that. Good to know. This is how does that work? But Jesus he's sleeping, and so the disciples went and woke him, saying, "Lord, save us. We're going to drown." Makes good sense, you know. We don't want you sleeping while we're drowning. This just doesn't make good sense at all. Well, then what happens? Jesus says to them, "Yeah, you little faith, why are you so afraid?" Well, again, it seems like the first thing Jesus should have done is saying, "Thanks for waking me up." You know, he says, "Why are you so afraid? Don't you know that I'm Lord of the sun, and I'm Lord of the sunshine and the beautiful days, but I'm Lord of the storms as well? Don't you know that I'm Lord of the storms as well? Don't you know that I'm Lord of the storms of your life as well?" And he got up and he rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. Maybe it was those simple words, "Peace, be still," and everything became calm. The men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him." What kind of man is Jesus? We do know this. Jesus was a man of prayer, don't we? I think Jesus drew strength from prayer and solitude and silence. Yeah. You know, we could probably stand, it would probably do us good at some point just to go around. Where do you draw your strength? Are you drawing strength through silence and solitude and prayer? If Jesus drew strength in this way, are we drawing strength in the same way? I mean, we need it. We need that same kind of. But Jesus was a man of prayer, for sure. He was also a man of the Word. He was also a man of the Word. He knew the Scriptures. You know, it's reflected when he was brought out in the desert and had this confrontation with Satan, and he was being tempted to move his ministry in a direction that was going to be second best. You know, Satan was not trying to tell Jesus to do anything that was really awful. Just don't focus your attention on God's plan for you, which is to move to the cross, move into the storms, take your life and give it solely over to God wherever He may lead. Take your life and I'll give you a second best. I'll make your life comfortable and influential and powerful, but just Don't give your life over to God so that He can move you wherever He chooses. Anyways, we do know this. Whenever Satan confronted Him, Jesus responded with the Word. The Word was deep inside of Jesus' life and soul, and He responded to life with the Scriptures deeply inside of Him. Let me ask you once again, have the Scriptures gotten inside of you to a point where they're guiding and directing your life? Are they influencing you? Are the stories of the Scriptures become the ones that help guide your moral compass? Is the message of the Scriptures forming the base for your understanding of your values in life? This is so important. This is the way Jesus oriented life. And I really believe the passage that Jesus was relying on during this storm was Psalm 107. That is a passage that is really worth looking at. The Psalm 107 is really, really worth looking at. Apparently, the nation of Israel, after the Babylonian captivity, Jerusalem is destroyed, wiped out, and the leaders are taken, and a good hunk of the nation's taken to Babylon, and they're there for 70 years, and then they come back and they rebuild Jerusalem. And in the process of rebuilding, they're able to see that God sustained them during the storm, that 70-year storm. God was there for them, despite all the things that they went through. And so the psalmist begins this psalm, Psalm 107, by saying, "Give thanks to the Lord, for He is good. His love endures forever." And let me just say, I think this is really important to get that inside of us at the start. I think Jesus wanted His disciples to say, you know what? Storm comes up in your life, the first thing you're to say is, "Thank you, Lord, for You are good. Your love endures forever." And that's the message. I think that's the first thing Jesus wanted those disciples to pray. He's saying, Lord, we want to give You thanks because this storm is not beyond You. It's not bigger than You are. It doesn't take You by surprise. This storm is something that You have, for some reason, ordained in our life. This is a powerful influence, as something that surprises me but doesn't surprise You. And so I'm going to give thanks for this storm. For You are good. Your love endures forever. And then you go down through this psalm, and there's refrain after refrain about various kinds of difficulties that people have gone through and God has provided. And the first difficulty is wandering in desert wastelands. Some wandered in desert wastelands, finding no way to a city where they could settle. They were hungry and thirsty, and their lives ebbed away. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and He delivered them from their distress, and He led them by a straight way to a city where they could settle. Let them give thanks to the Lord for His unfailing love. And then the next period is the next situation is that they're chained in darkness. They become prisoners. Some sat in darkness, in utter darkness, prisoners suffering in iron chains. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and He saved them from their distress, and He brought them out of darkness, the utter darkness, and broke away their chains. Let them give thanks to the Lord for His unfailing love. And it's kind of like starting out with thanks, ending it up with thanks. And it goes on to another situation. Some became fools through their rebellious ways, and suffered affliction because of their iniquities. Some of our storms are self-inflicted storms. How many of you have created a storm that's been the worst storm of all? I mean, it's not the outside, it's not anything that you could say, well, this happened outside, but it was my own storm. I created the storm, I got to admit it. It was stuff that I did that created the storm. Well, this is the kind of thing that was going on. But even then, they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and He saved them from their distress. And He sent out His word and healed them. He rescued them from the grave. Let them give thanks to the Lord for His unfailing love. And then we get to this part that I really want us to focus on. This is a storm at sea. Some went out on the ships on the sea in ships. He spoke, and stirred up a tempest that lifted high the waves. They mounted up to the heavens and went down to the depths in their peril, and their courage melted away. They reeled and staggered like drunkards. They were at their wits' end. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and He brought them out of their distress. He stilled the storm with what? With a whisper. It took Him nothing. It took God nothing to stop the furious storm. And the waves of the sea were hushed. And they were glad when it grew calm, and He guided them to their desired haven. Let them give thanks to the Lord for His unfailing love. I wonder if Jesus wasn't drawing from that passage and saying, you know what? You guys have read Psalm 107. Why don't you apply that to your life right now when you're in the ship, in the sea? Don't you realize that I'm the Lord of the winds and the waves? Don't you realize that I've got a plan and a purpose? All I need to do is to say, peace, be still. That's all I have to do. And what I want you to do, is to learn to trust in me in the midst of the storm. I want you to learn how to trust in me. That's why I said, you have little faith. I want to build that faith. How can I build your faith unless I let you experience a storm? You know, how can we build our faith if everything is going the way we want it to? You know what, Anthony? I'm kind of hoping that the Patriots are going to lose today, because it'll help build your faith, man. If everything goes smooth, in our life, there's if everything is just smooth, how can our faith be built? But it's when the storm hits and we realize that we're not in this alone. We're not in this storm alone. What is the worst storm that we're facing right now? We're not in it alone. That's Jesus' challenge to us. I am taking you into the storm. You're following me into the storm. It's not that you're just asking me to bless you while you're out there by yourself. I'm leading you into the storm. Follow me. Follow me. I'll bring peace when it's the right time. I'll still the winds when it's the right time. But right now, I want you to give thanks. I want you to give thanks because I'm up to something in your life. That storm is there for a reason. It's there for a purpose. It's there to do something that I can't do any other way in your life. Think about it. What are the greatest advances you've made in your walk with Christ and your spiritual life? It's always been the context of a storm, hasn't it? It's always been at the point where your life has been unexpectedly turned upside down and rearranged. And this is what God has in store for each of us right now, whatever the darkness, but in particular the storm. Jesus is challenging us. Can you take a step further? Can you trust? Can you let go? Can you let me take control? I've got something planned for you. When the darkest days hit my life, let me assure you, when the darkest days hit my life, it was at those points that other people were able to say, God's got something in store for you, and it's going to be really good. I really believe that for you. But that's not the issue. The issue is, can I believe it for myself? At the darkest days, when I'm entering those dark days, can I say right then, Lord, I believe you've got something in store. I believe it. I trust you. I trust you. I trust you. Let's pray together. Lord God, I just want to say thank you for the storms. They're hard. It's hard to say that. It's hard to say it. But if you're leading, if you're guiding, then what better place to be than in the boat with you? I pray that I have the courage to get in the boat with you rather than stay secure on the land, only to find out I've never lived life, I've never grown, I've never opened myself up, I've never discovered your plan and purpose for me. Give me the courage, Lord, to get in the boat with you, even though a storm may be on the horizon. To help me to trust you. Help me to trust you a little bit more than I ever have before. Help me to let go of some things that I've been trusting in. Help me to trust you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.